I didn't say that. I just comparing them to operations and systems, and so let's see. Some of you are familiar with some of those things. Let's just say Harley will be thorough. How's that? Let's see, I wanted to take you to...
But is it going to have us like rememorize all those dates and events and stuff? Yeah, that we covered in that first test?
You can ask me when we do the review.
Okay.
How's that?
That's terrible.
If I start getting on that, I won't get this done. I want to get this done. I wanted to show you, I talked a little bit about how they're going after hydrates on the McKenzie River Delta. This is actually a photo of that particular well drilling outfit. They were doing a coiled tubing rig to help facilitate the gas hydrates and what they were trying to get some of the things flowing. And what they did is they went in with warm fluid to help melt some of the stuff. I'll show you what they were actually, this is what they were trying to dig up. This is a ruler down below, and shows you the size. So this is very, very small, some of these hydrates. And what they do is they come up like this, and this particular hydrate, this is actually hydrate. It isn't just ice with rock mixed in it. It's actually a hydrate material. And if you melt it down, then you can pull the methane gas off. And so that's actually what you've got. And they're actually going ahead and drilling, melting down below the surface, and then going ahead and manually pulling the gas up. And they're trying to develop ways to go ahead and do that in an effective manner. This shows you some of the core samples that they were doing and pulling these up, taking a look at what they had. And this was experimental work, obviously, but there is a developing technology to go in and begin to drill and then produce hydrate gas. And hydrates are probably going to be one of the, you can get those onshore or offshore, they're probably going to be one of the places where gas is supplied from in the future. When, I can't say, depends on the technology, when the technology catches up to make it cost effective. But if you could start going in, pulling up hydrates, they're all over the world, especially on the ocean bottoms. Alaska's rich in hydrates and hydrate material. And so just to let you know, I think I showed you the map on some of this. This is where they were actually drilling. So when I was talking about this last week, it would have been right here where I said natural gas, and we were talking about hydrates, and it was this particular location right here. And that's a quick view. Let's try that again.
So it'll open right up and tell you it needs to be reopened.
About right there. That'll make it easy for me. There. And so this is up on the McKenzie River Delta, and this is where I was just showing you this camp that they were drilling at Mount. And with Alaska being over in this direction, and there's hydrates all along the Arctic plain. And so that is one place where it's actively taking place. And I think not the same kind of hydrates we have here. These are naturally occurring hydrates. So that's one thing I wanted to show you. Another thing I wanted to show you was down here. And this is, as this is coming up, I'm going to go ahead and get a shot of this. There's that.
I heard something about hydrates in the ocean a while back.
Yep.
Due to the cold and the pressure at the bottom of the deep ocean, there's methane trapped in hydrate form.
Lots of hydrates.
And it's just right there, and as the ocean's warm just a couple degrees, it's beginning to release that all into the atmosphere.
You know, when they were doing the recovery, if you recall, and you may not have noticed this in the news, but when they were doing the recovery trying to do the work to stop the Macondo well from the blowout in the Gulf of Mexico. And they tried lowering a bell over the well, and what their whole thought was, which was a very wise thought because it's worked in the past, is you take a bell housing, you set it over the well, you give the oil a place to go, you have a great big tube, and you literally produce up, and it goes ahead, sets right down on the bottom, and creates kind of a semi-seal over the well that's going to blow and go on up and instead of coming out underneath. And that's been successful for a lot of blowouts, especially under the ocean. Didn't work at the Gulf of Mexico. The reason is because there was enough heat being generated that it started melting the hydrates, and then on the ocean bottom, and the hydrates on the ocean bottom, and also hydrates that were coming up from down below, came up into where the bell housing came together into the feeder line, going up to the surface, and actually started forming up in that line, and then they plugged the line off. And they couldn't keep that line thawed. And so they had to abandon that entire thing. That should have been a normal procedure for a rescue on a blowout of that nature, especially one that was a kind of a mess like they had, where it was coming up in places that it shouldn't. And so that didn't work because the hydrates on the ocean bottom were melting and producing gas, which then that gas was reforming the hydrates and plugging the line. So we had a dual action taking place. Hydrates melting, hydrates flowing, hydrates reforming, and hydrates plugging. And so...
Yeah, it's just kind of crazy to think about. They're just sitting there on the ocean floor.
Pardon?
The hydrates, it's kind of crazy that they're just sitting
Yeah,
on the
they
ocean
are.
floor.
I've got did I not show you a map of that? They're all over. They're concentrated in various places, but hang on. I may be able to find that quickly. It is, and I don't know, I don't usually show that in here so much as...
Because what I heard is the major concern is there's just so much hydrates on the ocean floor, and they contain like methane, which is so much stronger than CO2 as a greenhouse gas, that if the ocean's warms a couple degrees, it's all it's going to need for those to just change into gas.
Yeah, it could actually melt the hydrates, which would be a mess. Because then you'd have lots of gas coming up all over. We'd have methane gas.
And yeah, methane gas cloud hits you, like everybody dies.
But a lot of it's kept in a frozen state where it's at because of the pressure, exceeding pressure. 2 miles of water, that's enough to keep a lot of, that's 10,000 feet, that's 4,300 pounds of pressure, so that's a lot of pressure down on the bottom pushing against that. So that creates the hydrates are able to go ahead and freeze up at about at least 50 degrees, it'd be closer to about 60 degrees they could go all the way up to before they begin to melt off. I was going to show you this because right now we've got a lot of activity in the Cook Inlet. This is from July of last summer, and this was to show you oil and gas activity, but more of the gas activity than anything. I had somebody asking me in another class earlier about the kitchen lights discoveries, and Fury is the one who has brought in the kitchen light discoveries. Your yellow, I believe, is gas. Hang on just a second before I quote that. No, that's wells drilled. But those are almost all gas wells that are being drilled in the kitchen lights. It's if you drive all the way out the North Road and you were to head up towards where the Swanson River campground is, and you look right straight out, and this is all the kitchen lights areas. So if you look across from right there and you see platforms over in the Trading Bay area and up this way, and then you look all the way up to the Tyoning platform, and the kitchen lights unit is right in this vicinity. They're planning on bringing a platform into this particular unit. I think they've already got permission to do that. And so this is some new areas where gas is being brought in. Out here in this Tiger Eye, gas is being brought in the let's see, Birch Hill, Nordak. In the Nordak area right in here, there's gas that's been brought in. And then across the inlet, let's see, just a second, because we were talking about gas last week. Then on up, it doesn't show us so well on here, but Cook Inlet Energy Resources has been looking up in this area, up to the north, up in these areas for gas. They bought a lot of leases and different things. Then down to the south, right here in the Deep Creek area, this has really begun to come in with some wells and some things over in this area, the Happy Valley area. Jack, you should be making lots of money. You own rights down there, don't you?
Yes.
And so Jack's going to be coming in a Cadillac one of these days, limousine, and all kinds of, yeah.
Pinky ring.
That's right, pinky ring. He'll have pinky ring. And
Between
so,
Alaska and Pennsylvania, or West Virginia, I ought to be in good shape.
that's right. He'll be a rich man. And so, but anyway, there's a lot of gas being discovered, a lot of gas being developed, not just discovered, but being drilled, produced, and developed, ready for delivery. It's part of what you're seeing with some of these plant facilities that are up and running. The LNG plant out north just started up in this last week. It's going to be running for at least a year. And so we've got other things that are happening, and a lot of it's because of new gas discoveries that are taking place all in the Cook Inlet Basin. So I wanted you to know that. Okay, I mentioned, we talked about hubs last week. We talked about hubs, and I mentioned about the Henry Hub down in Erath, Louisiana, which is very close to, and the name's going to slip my mind, but Erath is very close to Avery Island, which is where Tabasco sauce is made, and that is all very, very close to Henry, Louisiana. Okay, and the interesting thing is the reason it's called the Henry Hub is because it's located in Henry, Louisiana.
Who named the town after you?
Huh?
Who named the town after you?
I have no idea who named that town, but I do have a photo of that, I believe. Just a minute. If it's not right here, it's right back here. Hang on. Gas hydrates, gas wells, shale gas. No, it's not on that one. I was going to show you a picture of it. Just a minute. Well, now here, I made this claim that I have that, and maybe I do, and maybe I don't. I was pretty sure I did. Where did I run across it? I had it this morning. I didn't write down where I had it. Bummer. Now I can't find what I'm looking for. Oh, might be under week 14. Hang on. No, I wasn't in week 14. I was in week 13. What else I was right? No, that's well done. I wanted to show you a picture of it, just so you know I'm telling you the truth. I'm not done yet. I've got to find it. Pricing. That's what I needed. Pricing. That's Henry Hub. And so let's go ahead for a picture. Picture, I'll give you Erath, Louisiana first, and then that way you can kind of know. So I want you to know where your gas is being brought from. Well, that's coming up. I will also find you the picture. This is actually a dehydration plant to the max. We saw one yesterday out at the Kenai gas field that might have filled this room, and it was processing about 70 million standard cubic feet of gas a day. This is the facility that goes ahead and cleans up all the gas for about 20% of the nation. Maximum gas coming through there. I showed you the manifold and stuff, but this facility is about the size of Agrium. That's just the towers on it. And that's what you're... Now, why do I bring all that up? Because what are they talking about building, terminating in the Nikiski area here over the next 7 to 10 years?
That,
Great big monster gas line coming down here. Could be a 48 to 52 inch gas line coming right into Nikiski from the north slope. All the gas would be going into it. They'd be coming down here and they'd have a liquefied natural gas plant and they'd be shipping all that gas over to Japan because they're not going to run nuclear facilities anymore. And hey, their problem is our benefit. And so there's a ready market, and the state and the big producers like Exxon and different ones, they're all for this. So, and they're putting money into it, literally.
Yeah, did you hear about BP?
Yeah, BP sold out some
Yeah.
of their stuff, didn't they?
All except for Prudhoe Bay.
Huh? They what?
All except for Prudhoe Bay.
Yeah, they sold off all their small assets to Hillcorp.
Mhm.
So a lot of changes going on.
Is that good, bad, or indifferent that they did that?
It's indifferent. It really doesn't matter who's operating it. I mean, it's like people in houses. Who in here knows anybody that stayed in the same house for 65 years? You know, not very often. People buy and sell, buy and sell, buy and sell. But the reason I bring up this Henry Hub is because this is about the size of the facility needed on the north slope to ship the gas south. Then there's going to need to be periodic places along the way to go ahead and clean up, make sure the gas is clean. Then when it gets down here, it's going to have a monster facility like this to go ahead and process the gas. Think the LNG plant, only about 6 times bigger. It's going to be right on the size of, and with double bursts and different things so that you can offload. They want right around 1,600 to 1,800 acres, and land has already been purchased over this last month out there. They were surveying out there yesterday.
Japan gonna be sending up like super tankers of like the birth there or something.
Yep, they'd be way offshore out in the deep water. And so in the location they're going to be at below Agrium, they're going to have to be out about 1,800 to 2,000 feet out to get out into the channel. The channel comes in very close to the East Forelands, and then it's just a little bit beyond Chevron's dock, and then the LNG dock is pretty much, it starts curving out, so it's out a little bit further, but then the channel's out even further when you get further south. So this is what you're looking at as far as a facility, and they're going to need a lot of operators. Total, huh? It sounds horrible.
Oh yeah,
It's horrible.
right near my home. Yeah,
Yeah.
terrible.
Probably have a couple hundred operators out here, and maintenance people, operators, administration, all together. And then all the way up the line and then on the far end.
When is this supposed to happen?
Pardon?
When is this supposed to happen?
They're doing all the engineering work and all the studies and things and the permitting right now. Some of the permits are already in place. They're grandfathered in from a prior facility that was already grandfathered in. I would think that probably within 7 to 10 years, the place will be up and operating. At the most, everything going perfect stage, they said 7 years they'd be shipping gas. I think it'd be closer to 9. That's if there's no big roadblocks of any kind. Shouldn't be with a natural gas facility.
Whose name is going to be on the gate?
Yeah.
What's that?
So whose name is going to be on the gate?
Actually, I think what it'll be is a consortium. Exxon definitely will be behind it. They're the major holders of gas on the North Slope. Not BP, but Exxon is. Exxon's a major holder in Prudhoe Bay. They are the major holder in Point Thompson. Point Thompson is actually 2/3 of all the gas on the slope. And so when they're talking about shipping, they'll probably make it into like a Trans-Alaska pipeline, right? Build a public utility line because the state of Alaska is tied in with it. So it'll be some kind of a consortium, and then they'll have their own, and also the Trans-American Pipeline System, I can't recall their name, I'm not real familiar with them, but they're also tied in with it. So there'll be a consortium of some kind that'll be operating the pipeline and the facilities, or they'll have the facilities separate, the pipeline will be part of it, but the whole thing will tie together. I don't know who the name will actually be. But it'll be coming. I'm sure everybody here will know.
Thinking, have a little experience under my belt by then, I'll just apply at that new facility and it's
Well, it'll be really fascinating because we actually have 3 different things going on out north. We have local gas in the inlet being discovered in the southeast Alaska Basin or south central Alaska Basin, and that's building up our local LNG plant, the Agrium plant, and other things. Then we have the oil that is coming in. That's a whole separate issue. That's beginning to take off because they're going down into deeper strata, down into what's called the Tuxedni zone, which is part of the Jurassic area. And then we have this gas coming from the North Slope that wants to end right here because this is the best place. They call it the most, how did they put it? There was a name that they used. I've only seen it once or twice, and it was the most industry-friendly area in Alaska. That's why they chose the Kenai and Kiski area. And so they want to end the pipeline here, and then so that would be all that work. So you could literally have Agrium starting up, which would require a lot of operators and maintenance people. You could have the LNG plant locally expanding. You could have this new LNG plant coming on. And now with the refinery up north closing in Fairbanks, Tesoro is trying to consider what they're going to do. So because there's already a demand for more product. So they've got to come up with some solutions.
they could expand maybe.
So there's definitely some things taking place there too. So lots of interesting things. It's a good time. It's kind of like back in about 1957 when oil was discovered here. And for the next 15 years, it was just crazy around here. Because there were facilities building, there was this going on, that going on. And so we're kind of moving back into that same kind of a situation. All right, my map didn't come up, so I guess you'll just have to, it says it's loading, I don't believe it. You guys can look on the map, look for Henry, Louisiana, and that's where the Henry Hub is. It's really not that important what we're looking for. Okay, so the next thing I want to take you to is a permitting chart. This was on the natural gas thing. Let's see. No, I was taking you to the, we did the oil and gas. Let's go right here to, and then I'm going to take you through hard to get oil. Okay, this is the Arcadis. This map was accurate in about 2 years ago. It's probably changed since then. If you're wondering what all the little squares are, I can actually increase the size on this, but I wanted you to get a full view. This is actually the permitting chart, a flow chart for all of the permits necessary to drill a well in the south central area. All of these squares apply. Let's take a look at a few of them. Okay, and it's not that they're overwhelming, it's just that there's a lot of them, okay? So to give you an idea of what we're looking at, first off, let's go right here. The pink are state permits, the green are federal permits, the blue are Kenai Peninsula permits, and then you have the circles, which are permits that are subject to coastal consistency review. Okay, so let's start over here. These are the borough permits. And I'm not going to belabor this too much, and I'm not going to give you a whole lot of opinion on it, but I will tell you that for overland access, you need to contact all of these folks, and they all have to give you permission. If you have camp facilities, you have to have permission from all of these folks. If you have A drill pad, you've got to go ahead and talk to all of these folks, and they all have to sign off. Now, I want you to recall, or keep in mind, at any place on these permitting that I'm showing you, one individual within this framework of this oversight can stop the project. Okay? And so, let's see, spill prevention, you have to go ahead and come in with these requirements. Drilling, you've got to come in, Alaska Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, you've got to go through development wells and the ADNR and all kinds of things. You've got to go ahead and apply for waste storage and disposal. So that gives you just kind of an idea of some of the things that you're going to look at just to drill a well that has no guarantee that it's going to be successful. Okay? If we come down and look at this, the borough has permits. You go ahead and submit your permit. This would be for completeness review, RFAI, which I cannot tell you, that's something to do with information, and then on through the Borough Planning Commission, public hearings, permit decisions, permit issued. Then, when you start getting into federal action, you get into the Endangered Species Act, you get into the different sections of the some of these acts, and then it goes on across. You have to file notices of intent, general permitting, and on across. And in any place you've got hold points, that's what the yellow means, hold points at which you have to get additional data, public hearings, and then you get on across until you finally get your permits somewhere over in here. And so this is some of the permitting just to get a well, let's see, over here, and you finally get into your permit. That's for state or federal permitting. Then your state permits have to do with camps, have to do with notifications of intent, coastal zone consistencies, Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation, et cetera, and so there's a lot of permitting. And if you guys want this website, actually you can look up the address, Arcadis Flowchart, Cook Inlet offshore, or onshore. This isn't even offshore, this is an onshore, and it would be right up here at the top. Arcadis Flowchart, Cook Inlet onshore draft. And that will give you some kind of an idea of what it takes. This isn't to overwhelm you, I just want you to realize how much is involved. The days of a private individual going and drilling an oil well are almost unheard of anymore.
Because they need like a whole team just to manage this, right?
You actually need, they've got actual project management groups and lawyers that do nothing but just do your permitting for you. And what you would do is you actually would contract them. You wouldn't even hire them on staff. What you do is you contract them. That's their specialty. That's what they do. And you'd be money ahead to do that because they know how to work something through the process most effectively. And normally those kind of folks also have a lot of friends in the permitting areas where they know how to make things happen. You're not paying graft money, and don't get me wrong on this. It's just that sometimes it's easier to talk to somebody when you need to get a permit if it's somebody that you already know and have worked with before. And so that's what I'm talking about. And because you see a lot of things taking place, but I want you to know how much is behind the scenes going on. So when we say, well, why is Agrium not getting started? Because they have a 6-month delay on permitting. Part of this applies to them. What was it they said? That there was something like 100 permits that they had to get just to update their permitting. Their permits really never went out of date. They just had to upgrade them. And they had something like 100 major categories and then all the minor categories that were underneath that. So it takes a good staff of people who really like doing that kind of work.
And it pays well.
I qualify that. I don't. I've done this kind of work before in the past when I ran contracting companies. I never did like it. I've done it, but I didn't like it. But some people really thrive on doing this kind of work. Any questions on that? I'm not making any kind of a political statement. I just want you to know that there's a lot involved. Okay, it's not, I just don't go out and punch a hole in the ground. And it has to be complete. It's like mining. It has to be complete. It's like, okay, I'm going to build a pad, but what are you going to do with that pad when you're done? And you already have to have that plan in place before you ever start. And it may be that it's a critical habitat area. Okay, well, then I want to see an environmental impact statement. And then for road access, for example, here just recently on the Nordax systems, they had the pad permit, but they had a struggle getting a permit for a right-of-way to build a pipeline to go in and ship the gas out that they just discovered. Well, they were in good shape because Siri had rights to go ahead and cross the National Wildlife Refuge, but for a less than 5-mile line, the National Wildlife Service was not going to issue a permit. They said, no, we won't do it. We're sorry. And then, but Siri, Cook Inlet region, their access rights trumped the National or Fish and Wildlife Service, and so went to court. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decided with Cook Inlet region, and so that brings up another point. You'd want to take your partners when you're getting ready to do this stuff. All right, let's move on. So that gives you some idea on permitting. I would print this out, but they would be little. I had to really make the. In fact, I don't have it all on there yet. Hang on. Let's go down a little bit smaller. There, I had to go down to 10% size to get it all. You know, I should order this whole chart and put it on the wall. I think it'd be good for everybody to see that. So maybe in the future, that's what I'll do. And this is just for the Cook Inlet. It gets worse in other places, especially when you start going offshore. Okay, so let's take a look at some stuff. Let's go with hard to get oil, and let's go down to right here. Heavy oil reserves by country. I think I showed you this the other day, didn't I? Was it in here that I showed this to you guys? Did I? Have I not shown this to you? Maybe in my imagination I thought I showed it to you.
So there's a lot of really heavy oil there to get.
Okay, so there's a lot of oil in this world. And the heavy oil, the big heavyweight oil, that is heavy, extra heavy, and all of that kind of stuff, the biggest holders in that are the green, and then the brown, and then the red, and then the purple. So where do you see the biggest holders of heavy and extra heavy oil?
Canada and Russia.
That's right. Canada and Russia are the heavyweights when it comes to heavyweight oil and that type of thing. Venezuela is a big holder. And also over in Iraq. Those are really the king of the mountains when it comes to it. Canada being one of the biggest as far as heavy and extra heavyweight oil is hard to get. And it puts Saudi Arabia to shame if you start calculating up oil. Canada's right on par with Saudi Arabia, if not more, as far as total oil reserves. And so is Venezuela. Venezuela is just literally underlain in their Orinoco Basin by all this heavy oil, of which there hasn't been a real successful way of getting it out yet. Then the next places that have a lot of heavy oil happen to be Saudi Arabia, Alaska, the US, Mexico, and China. So when you're really looking at oil reserves, it isn't so much just the Middle East. It's, if you're really looking, if we had the technology today, the biggest oil states would actually be Canada, Russia, Iraq, Venezuela, America, and Mexico, China, and Saudi Arabia, and then a little bit of Indonesia, and that would really be your oil states. That's where the real oil is, not just the easy to get oil, but the heavy, nasty, hard to get type stuff. Which brings us then to, oops, I hit the wrong button, hang on. So with that said, let's take a look then on our hard to get oil. So this is oil shale. I'm going to take you through a few things of oil, and so if I've got oil shale, this isn't just the like gas shale where you're doing fracking and long horizontal things. This is the really thick, really tight formation oil shale that is hard to get oil to flow because it hasn't got good permeability. And we have two ways of pulling it out. One is fracturing it and then retorting it, or mining it, crushing it, and retorting. Either way, it's going to seem like a semi-mining process, because what we're going to do is we're going to dig it out, we're going to crush it, we're going to try all kinds of things to get the oil to come out, but 9 times out of 10, what you're going to do is a retort system, and then you're going to go ahead and refine it and send it on. Let's take a look at what a retort system is. This is oil shale in Colorado. In this particular case, they're doing an experiment. What they're doing is they're actually going down with hot electric coils, if you can imagine, and they're trying to effectively see if they get into a place where the cost isn't too great, going down with electric coils inside of areas that are drilled near these wells to start to melt the oil out through heat, so that it will begin to flow because it's just tight in the formation, and then begin to pull it out that way. It's not been cost productive yet, and they know the oil is there, but it's just not a good way to produce it.
It costs so many dollars to pump the energy into the coils.
Yeah, and I actually had a student about 5 years ago that brought in a piece of oil shale that he had worked with, and so he had an actual piece of it, and when you looked at it, it looked like a piece of rock, and if you just set it down, it looked like a piece of rock, but when you held it for just a moment, it was just rock, but when you held it for a little bit of time, and then set it down, you had this oily residue on your fingers. And what it was doing was actually warm enough to begin to melt the oil out of the shale, and it had this oily residue. And if you actually held it up close to your nose and put your hand on it, let it warm up, and then like that, it smelled like crude. But it didn't want to flow out very easily. A retort is nothing but just a beaker like you see in a laboratory. This is actually an old-time retort. This would be to give you an idea, I'm going to show you a modern one in just a moment. You take the raw shale, pour it into your hopper, you've got a valve system, so you go ahead and let it go down into this retort. Retort is nothing but a giant furnace, and you're boiling off all the oil, and then you're pulling out all the gravel so that you go ahead and collect your gas and oil out of your vapor. And so it becomes a method for separation. That's what the retort is. It's just a method of separation to go ahead and pull oil and gas off. And so if we look at a modern one, this is being used up in Alberta, up in the Athabasca tar sands, where they are harvesting these tar sands, which for all purposes look like you're going out and digging up a road, because it just looks like a oily, gravelly road that's all mashed together with gravel, sand, grit, and everything else. And so you have to go ahead and heat it all up so that you can pull this oil off. And they're trying all kinds of ways to speed up that process. I'll show you the mining side process that's being used, but this particular retort is almost as long as a football field, 62 meters you see right there. And so what you've got is you're feeding in a constant feed so that it's coming in, it's heating up, and it's pulling the oil off, the gas off, and all the vapors and everything. And then and you can keep it flowing, you can keep things moving through it at a constant rate without having to shut down and empty your hoppers and things like that. So you've got your feed, your oil shale feed coming in, preheating, and then going through your retort, and then you're going ahead and dropping out your vapor traffic, pulling it out, and then dropping out your gravel and all of that type of stuff. So it's a constant feed is what it is. I bring this up because that's what different ones are trying to find any way they can. In the Athabasca tar sands, they're right in the midst of change and have been for the last couple of years. And they're actually increasing production. I'll show you how that works. But they're still trying to find ways to clean up the gravel in a cost-effective manner. And so that's not been accomplished real well. This is what it would look like. You pull off kind of a tar ooze. Anybody in here handled tar before? Yeah, okay. So we used to have it on our roads in Oregon. It would just melt in the summertime. Or you could run across it with your bare feet, leave tracks on it, blister your feet. So this is actually up in Fort McMurray, and these are some of the areas that where they've got some of their leftovers that are running down where they've been mining. I'm going to show you some photos up close of what it is when you're doing this.
It's like environmental devastation.
I'll come back to that in a little bit. I'm going to show you a whole bunch of slides that are exactly on that. That's Athabasca tar sands are one thing. Give you kind of an overview. The Bakken is another. I'm going to take you through a slideshow on the Bakken here in just a bit. This is an entirely different thing. This right here is this cross section here, right across. Now, most people think of the Bakken as just being North Dakota. It's not. This is the overpressure area. This is actually the Williston Basin, this entire thing. This is all oil production area. And then this is actually the Bakken. This is that big pancake formation that we talk about. And then this is actually a ridge, an anticline running through it. Right here, this would be the antelope field. So this cross section right here is this right here. This is the Neeson anticline in there. And so it gives you, it's kind of convoluted, but it's basically a big pancake field with a few anticlines in it like this. And then they've got some cross folds in it also. If you can imagine a paper like this that's flat, but it's also got a few ridges in it, something like this, and turned around. But it's basically a flat, it's all contained in this one area, which you'll understand in a little bit what that means.
It's actually a really nice and neat formation for an oil formation, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm going to show you. This is up through 2010. If this will work for me, I think it might not work. All right, how do I get that one to work?
It's there, just go back to the other pages.
Which page?
Well, the other program, the Microsoft.
Right here? Yeah.
Oh, you wanted to go back to the other picture and zoom in?
Well, actually, I wanted to get it to open, right, so it would open on this, because it'll actually show it scrolling through a bunch of years. Allow block content. Aha! Let's see if that's going to work.
Maybe it'll refresh. The refresh button up on top by the.
Wow.
Try opening it with the Firefox or Chrome.
Maybe it will. I'll try it again.
Yeah, Internet Explorer is
It works
terrible.
at home. I don't know why it doesn't work here.
See, it's Internet Explorer. It's the end.
You've seen it before, haven't you? Have I showed it to you before?
Uh-huh.
We got this to work before.
Try a different browser.
It doesn't like ActiveX. I'm going to try one more time. Well, irregardless, all right. So we'll try it this way. Didn't like that either, didn't like that either. It doesn't like it running, that's what it doesn't like. Okay, so they've got this thing pretty well restricted. I should have brought my laptop. And actually it's okay, because what you start off with is it'll show how in the last 10 years it went from just a few wells to more wells to more wells to more wells. And actually, this is 2010. This is 4 years old now, or 3.5 years old. And this is actually about 1/3 of what you got for wells. It's just actually
Exploded.
mushroomed even more so. And so you started off in the 1970s down in here, then 1987, then 2000, 1996, then over in this particular area here. And now it's literally a boom area, and you can see all kinds of terrible things that they're talking about in the news. Yes,
What's the
sir.
difference between the green and the yellows?
Between the green and the yellow. The green are 0 to 1,000 barrels of oil being produced, and the yellow are the ones that are 1,000 to 6,000 barrels of oil being produced. And so, and then these are wells that are gas wells that are above 6,000 barrels equivalent. So these are your smaller producers, these are your bigger producers. And so they've got some pretty good sized producers. They're producing about 100,000 barrels, no, about 200,000 barrels more a day now than Alaska is. So they're up to about 650,000 barrels a day. They're figuring to go on up to about 750, 800,000 over the next couple of years.
But Alaska's gonna do the same thing, you're saying?
Alaska's going to be right there again. You wait and see. So let me show you a little Bakken PowerPoint, and then I'm going to come back and show you a great big thing on the Athabasca tar sands. But I will show you this Bakken PowerPoint. Now this used to be a huge PowerPoint. I've delineated off. I only got about 18 of the slides on here, so because it was too monsters. North Dakota crude up through 2012. Kind of floated along, and even floated along until right here in about 2003, 2004. What took place? Number of things, we've talked about it in here. Technology. What's one of the first ones? Horizontal drilling. Steerable tips, okay?
Fracking.
Okay, that was pretty cool, wasn't it? I should have went. Let's see. That's got to be the end of the semester, I'll tell you what. Either that or I breathed way too many fumes yesterday. I'll tell you, the last 2 days on tour, I came in lightheaded. Too much benzene. So what we've got is this. It's just like 1859 in America and around the world, the 1850s. What's happening? Technology has suddenly changed the world of oil. I've got friends who are as old as I am, whose dads, when they were in their 20s, were working in the Bakken field. In fact, their grandparents worked in the Bakken field. They grew up in North Dakota, in the Williston Basin, and it was one of those areas where they always talk, it's got such great potential. Yeah, but nobody can make it work. And they were right. Everybody knew the oil was there. They knew that the entire area there had oil. They just couldn't figure out how to produce it. And look, what was it doing from 1997 on down? It was starting to decrease again until right here. Shale gas on the East Coast and the Bakken, and all took off at the same exact time, within a matter of months of each other.
It was a rush in like '84, like the '80s. There was a good sized rush in the '80s, it looked like.
Yeah, but that had to do with pricing more than anything.
OPEC embargo.
That's exactly right, right there. OPEC and the gas price of oil. This is actually up around 650,000 now for 2012, 2013, 14. And they're planning on being somewhere up in here. So let's go on down further. This is actually the Bakken Shale within the Williston Basin. You'll notice it isn't just North Dakota, is it? Over in eastern Montana and all over up in Saskatchewan. Now your Athabasca tar sands are up in Alberta. They're up in this area up here. This is a whole separate issue right here. This is what it looks like. This is the Three Forks Formation, which is on that map I just showed you a little bit ago. This would be what they look like. You'll have shale up above. This has got it laid out flat. It would actually be like this. So if you were looking at it, I turned it because the map, this used to be a different way. But this would be your upper portion, this would be your lower portion, this would be the middle member, which is a dolomite. Very, very good porosity, very, very, very good permeability. And the oil that is coming out of the Bakken is almost like designer crude. It is crude to die for, if you will. You know, it's kind of like going to a fine restaurant where the food is just fantastic. And you come out of there feeling good, and you don't get sick. How's that? And their dessert was just gorgeous. I mean, and, you know, and so that's really what the Bakken is excellent crude. It has almost no bottom ends. It only makes good gasoline and good jet fuel and middle distillates and all of that type of stuff. It has good oil gravity. You can see at 36 to 44. It has good porosity. It has good water saturation. Gas to oil ratios are excellent. Reservoir temperatures are not too bad. Reservoir pressures 5 to 8,000. Just wants to produce right out of the ground. Permeability. It's got good millidarcies. Everything's great. Good stuff. It's all on private land. Lots of people making money. I'm going to show you that here in a little bit.
That much porosity, if you were like make a carpet bucket out of that and put water in it, it would just empty in like minutes, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would just flow. It flows very easily. Pumps very easily, just moves. Here's some of what I meant by designer crude. This is your Bakken, and your LLS is down in Louisiana Light. Then you've got Alaska North Slope and Kern County, which is down in around Bakersfield, California. And so these are some of the crude qualities, API gravities, and sulfur, and then their distillation cuts. Now, take a good look at this, because that stuff in California, what's it got a lot of? Nasty oil, nasty. I mean, it is sulfur-ridden, miserable stuff. But is the North Slope much better? Go ask Tesoro. They've got a monster pile of sulfur sitting in behind a refinery. In fact, if you've got a use for it, they will give it to you. They might sell it to you for a penny a ton just so they can say they made a profit. They've only made profit on getting rid of their sulfur once in about the last 20 years. Otherwise, they actually paid people to take it.
Find a match manufacturer.
Who uses matches in here? Now they use, what are those things called? Big lighters, you know? And with smoking going downhill, there's not as many lighters being sold. Louisiana Light is pretty good crude. It's got a good API gravity, very little sulfur. The Bakken, how's the sulfur comparison?
Pretty low.
Almost no sulfur. Clean and oil. Very, very clean. Take a look at the distillation cuts. This is quite amazing when you take a look. Resid being yellow. Is resid a good thing when we've got crude? What do I have to do with resid? I have to run it through cat crackers. I have to run it through hydro crackers, alkylation units, all kinds of fluid catalytic crackers. The same with current crude, Alaska North Slope. Now, it's not so bad with Louisiana Light, but look at the Bakken. How much light in, or heavies do I have?
1%.
Middle distillates, that's jet fuel and distillate being like my diesel cuts and things like that. Massive amount, well, we've got a lot in here, but almost no gasoline. North Slope, we've got some, but and we've got some gasoline products. Louisiana Light, we've got a lot of middle distillates, a lot of gasoline products. Look at this. Massive amounts of gasoline, massive amounts of middle distillate. Like I said, designer crude. It's almost all production value and almost no waste and almost no double running and having to run the product through crackers and things like that. So, good stuff. Bakken operators, these are some of the people that were operating. You're going to see a lot of names that you don't recognize, and you're going to see some names that you may recognize. Statoil's a foreign company out of Norway. Some of the others, I have no idea who they are. Emirata Hess, this would be Hess, but a lot of these others, they are front companies for majors. Don't ever think that the majors aren't involved in the Bakken. They are, but they've got front companies who they are bought into. Let me explain. Back when this thing was a nothing, people bought up all the leases, negotiated leases, and all kinds of things with different folks. And there were a lot of small companies that were trying very hard to make this work. And then when the technology came along, who owned all the leases? These folks did. They didn't sell them, but what they did is they sold a portion. It'd be like if Jeremy was a major holder in the Bakken, and me being Exxon with pockets full of money, I come along and I go, Jeremy, you got the leases. Would you like to develop this? I will help you. You keep the name, you do this, and I will just make money on it. I will go ahead and front you, and we'll both be successful. Is that a good thing? Absolutely. And that's what you see there. There's a lot of companies like that. What's that?
That'd be nice.
Pockets full of money. That's okay. So they do have an interesting thing happening on their wells. Their wells will start off at a pretty high rate, and what you'll see is the annual production barrels per day. They'll start off on individual wells at a pretty high rate, and then they drop off pretty fast over a 5-year, 10-year period. And it's an inherent thing with their wells. Their maximum production occurs in just the first 5 to 7 years because of the narrowness of the formation. Okay, and they also have a unique way of drilling. I'll show you that. This is Marathon Oil Company, sitting near the Missouri River, and so what you have is, this is kind of and this just gives you an idea that they were drilling, but I'll show you what they're doing. This shows you some of what they started doing. They started at Elm Coulee, when they really began to develop some of the laterals. They were starting to go out further and further, and then started drilling in different frac stages. So here what they began was one single long uncontrolled frac, then they started going to frac stages, then to 20 frac stages. Now they're down to 30 to 38 frac stages where they're controlling what they're doing. The technology is really changing and developing to where you, instead of just one great big huge uncontrolled fracturing technique that happened just less than 10 years ago, it's gone to multiples where it's a little more work, a little more cost, but a lot more production. A lot better results. So that you go in and you're fracking, and you're going to see up above, it looks very odd the way that they do this. I'll show you how they lay all this out. It's a lot different than the North Slope. But when you're coming down and you're going ahead and fracturing the entire formation to draw as much maximum draw on the dolomite as possible. This is actually a fracking operation, Dunn County, North Dakota. Probably would be good to be in the rain for rent tank business. That's what you're seeing here. 1, 2, 3, I don't know, there must be about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, about 55 to 60 of those tankers. This is what they do on some of their leases. This is what it looks like. To give you an idea, this is actually mapped out where you're going in these long strings in different directions like this, and to where you're trying to maximize your yield so that you can on your lease. Instead of just drilling down like we saw on the formation off of the A platform where they went in all kinds of different directions, here they're actually laying it out with energy corridors, and then what you do is you lay out your well spacing to maximize your production within that pancake formation so that there's no oil pockets left, no stranded oil, if you will. And so these are being laid out all over the place. So this is what you do. This would be the undrained reservoir, and then you go ahead and set your wells out, and this would be coming this way, this would be coming this way, this would be going this way, this way. In other words, you'd lay it out to where you maximize, and you begin laying out like so, because everything you see has oil. It's not like an anticline. It's pancake formation. So you want to go ahead and, it'd be like if all these tiles down here were part of the leases, and say, okay, well, I've got this lease, so I want to maximize this, and I want to maximize this, and that's what they're doing. Is they've developed new techniques for going ahead and maximizing the production. To go back and look at this, then these are actual maps from actual wells in part of the North Dakota region. Anyway, I found that interesting and fascinating because it's completely different than, it's almost like a grid in a city.
Very organized.
Anybody in here ever been to medieval cities over in Europe or the Middle East or anything like that? And they're laid out just haphazard. Wherever anybody happened to go, that became a road and then got developed into a part of the city. But you go into some city that's been built in the last, like Anchorage, or not Anchorage so much, but other places that have been built in just where they've gone in and done urban development, and they lay them out nice grid patterns, and everything's organized. That's
Just
what
the
you
way
do
Lubbock
here.
is, their streets going in one direction are all in alphabetical order. College streets to the north side, Tree streets to the east side, through the middle is like Madison, or city streets, and then first through 180th,
That's
going the other way. Yeah,
Has lots of organization.
yeah.
And so that's how this is all being laid out, which it can be done because we've got this thin pancake formation in which you've got oil all over the place, not just being gathered in one spot. So this gives you a good overview. These are all wells in the Sanish field, in the partial field, 640 acres each, 640 acre sections. Gives you some idea of what this looks like.
I'll take just 1 acre.
You what?
I'll take just 1 acre.
So you can imagine what it's like for some folks who own 440 acres, and this is some really intense drilling along in here, but these others are places where they've drilled and organized and said, okay, this is what we're going to do. Personal wealth creation, if you've got a 1,200 acre lease, one well with production of 1,000 barrels per day, first month production 23,000 barrels, estimate $80 barrel oil, landowner one section 640, royalty rate 3/16, are paying higher than normal.
It's a lot.
Your first month's royalty check's going to run about 172,000
One well.
off of just off that one well and that. So needless to say, some of the old ranchers and farmers in North Dakota have doing well.
Giving up ranching.
They're probably not growing wheat anymore. Or raising cattle.
Well, then why wouldn't you? It's just another one month.
Yeah. Yeah.
You give your son-in-law a job.
Yeah, we've got some folks up here that have relatives that have oil wells down there. Okay, let's take a break. We're going to come back and just about a little 5-minute break or so, and then we'll come back and talk about some other stuff, and then we'll do a review.
Yeah, that's the word I'll use for myself.
Give me something to do for the weekend. All right, Athabasca tar sands. All right, these are the ones that are feeding in the proposed, that isn't actually proposed, it's actually part of the Keystone Pipeline. There's a lot of Keystone Pipeline, it's just a new section that hasn't been built yet. I'll show you that in a little bit. We were just talking about the Bakken. The Bakken would be right down here. Montana, North Dakota, and the Saskatchewan. Tar sands are on up in here, and there's more than just Athabasca. There's Peace River and also Cold Lake tar sands. Tar sands are a little different than your normal oil field. These are a oil field that is, it's almost like your formation is at the surface, would be a good way of putting it. And this actually tilts a little bit like so that you've got it's interlaying with gravel. It's like I said, it's almost like pavement in a lot of ways. This is Fort McMurray. It's a great big oil town now up in northern Canada. Very similar. Think of Kenai, Alaska and Anchorage being combined, only Anchorage would be an oil town instead of a commercial town, and you've got Fort McMurray. They have process colleges there and everything else. This is actually an oil seep coming out of the tar sands. And so it isn't like it is, they've actually got oil that is coming out of the soil and literally just flows out and wants to ooze out is what it does. Like I said, hot runny tar on a road in the summertime, and that's what you've got as far as the tar sands. This would be a good picture of what they look like. If you were to take oil and mix in take heavy thick oil and mix in all kinds of sand into it to where it just became kind of a sandy, lumpy mess, and that would be your tar sands. It can have gravel, but when you get it down to where it's just the sand, this is what it would look like. The production growth on tar sands has been astronomical, and it's interesting because between the Bakken and the tar sands production, Saudi Arabia, as far as our producers for oil, is going down to about 4th or 5th place. They're just slowly going down, especially with America's production going up as it is. And so this actually has grown even more so than this particular prediction. This in situ is actually higher. They're somewhere, for 2014, they were over 4 million. So this was actually estimated back in 2006. And in 2006, they were hoping that they would be at about 4 million by 2014, 2015. And they actually arrived at that in the summer of 2013, right in here, and up to about 4.5 million now. And so they're actually ahead of schedule because the in situ, which we will cover in detail, is working a lot better than had been anticipated. I made this one purposely small, and that's because that is the entire tar sands in America. It is in Utah by Colorado, and there's a little tiny mining operation. That's it. There are no tar sands like we have in the up in the Canadian area. So that is the whole sold total of tar sands in America. Then, so what we do is there's a number of ways to do this. One, we can mine it with a great big huge mining operation. When I say big in mining, I mean the bigger the equipment, the better, because if I've got big equipment, what can I do? Move lots of dirt. And what I want to do is move a lot of dirt. And so if I've got a great big huge drag line operation, these drag lines, oftentimes these buckets can hold 100 tons at a scoop. Sometimes 125 tons at a scoop.
So that crane thing is like the size of a gigantic.
Oh, they're
building.
monsters. I've got,
It's like a town, right?
yeah, they're monsters. The biggest one, actually the biggest one is buried in Kentucky now. Peabody Coal Company had it. There was some songs about it back 40 years ago, anti-oil coal songs. And but that particular shovel and drag line, theirs was a shovel, but the drag lines can be monsters. When you see the little walkways on here, that's just about the right size, because what they do is they have these big buckets that are 100-ton buckets. Your normal dump truck around here will haul about 12 tons. And so these will haul as much as, say, 8 to 10 dump truck loads, standard dump trucks. I'll show you some big dump trucks. And what these do is they're like a crane, but they're not. What they do is they actually go out like this and take the shovel, will clear out, and they drag it all the way back, and they'll pull up 100 tons at a time and dump it into a truck, go back out, another 100 tons. You want to move a lot of soil. The more soil you move, the quicker your operation, the more money you make.
They actually throw that bucket out there.
Pardon?
They actually throw that bucket out there.
Yeah.
They pull it up close and then let it swing out, and then
Yep, and then drop her
it
down.
at the right place and then drag it in.
And drag it back. This would be a great big huge one right here. That's an 8-foot door right there, just to give you some idea. And there's a little tiny 3-foot walkway right there. You can't hardly see it. There's a 3-foot walkway right there. So it's a little deceptive on the size when you don't really understand what you're looking at. But that gives you some idea of how big these pieces, and they're mobile. They move. They don't move very fast, but they do move. This is a big, gigantic shovel. This particular one picks up about 50 to 60 tons at a time. This gives you some idea. There's about 14 steps coming up the side. Great big shovel. You can see the size of this big P&H shovel.
It's microscopic compared to the other one.
Huh?
It's microscopic compared to that other one.
Yeah, still big. So this is loading up a truck. Now the trucks are a little deceptive in size, so I want you to take a good look right here. That right there is about 18 steps going up a ladder or a stairway. So just so that you get a good feel for just how big this is. Big old Eucharist shovel right there. And so there's a lot of, it would appear to be just nothing more than a mining operation. Here this is looking across over towards Fort McMurray. This is Sunoco. They're the biggest operator in the tar sands. This is the tar sands hauling truckloads, and it looks like some nice big trucks going down. Well, this gives you some idea on the size. There's a guy down below, about my size. Let's see, how did he do that? Oh, there. And so, I mean, look at the rear end on that thing. It's like a monster. And that's either 100, 125.
What time you got?
Time out. I got to talk to Lucas because he wants to graduate.
I took that over to the
Registrar.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, go over and check with her.
That's kind of nice reading.
I signed it, but we'll talk. I was around at 4, whatever you are. So up until now, we're thinking what? Mining, okay? Think mining, but we're going to change that in just a little bit. But I want you to think mining. But what happened was the mining would only go just so fast. You could only move so much dirt at a time. And then we're going to see where they begin to combine some of the new technology with some old technology, and we'll see that. And this is where the industry is going. And this would be in the underground type thing. So part of the problem with the above ground is when you do above ground and you're strip mining, how many people, other than the people cashing the checks up at the stock market, how many people are happy with strip mining? That's a good way to put it. Not very many people. Who in here has a bumper sticker that says, "I love strip mines"?
I got one that says,
Probably no strip mining. Okay. So I'm just kidding. So what happened was a new technique called a SAGD, that is a steam-assisted gravity drainage technique, came into play. It's an in situ. That means that you literally are down in the ground, you drill down into the tar sands. Now I said the tar sands actually tip, and they do. They're up at the surface on one side of the tar sands, and then they take and they slant downward. And so part of the reason that this was developed, along with the strip mining problems, was the fact that the tar sands were starting to dive down deep and needed some way to bring that oil up without digging enormous amounts of overburden off of the ground. So they said, well, if there was some way we could go down in here, so a lot of the in situ requires boilers, if you will, steam boilers, and the steam boilers then heat up steam that go down into the ground. Let me show you some drawings on this. This was the original concept, was that you would go ahead and actually this was originally used in a cyclical steam stimulation, and you'd actually put steam down and begin to thaw out the tar sands, and very similar to the heat coils I talked about with shale, only this is a lot more loose, and it's, instead of being hard compressed rock, it's more like pavement out here. And so you begin to steam it, and as you steam it, and then what you do is you begin to pump, you leave an evacuation route, and you actually begin to pull oil up. This wasn't very productive. The reason it wasn't very productive is that everything was straight down. Well, in the early first, how do you say that? 2005, how's that? Mid first decade of the 21st century. Boy, that hurt my tongue. Okay. If somebody said, you know, they're having good success with this horizontal drilling. What if we drill down and we horizontally put in our steam and recovery, and we begin to put steam on top, and we put the oil suction lines down below, and as this begins to thaw, it will begin to make evacuation routes, and we can begin to pull oil up. Somebody said, that sounds like a capital idea. Let's try that, see how that works. And so this is what took place. I'll show you in this next diagram. Steam-assisted gravity drainage. And this is literally what they have gone to and this is replacing a lot of the overburden removal and strip mining removal with the tar sands, and this has also increased the production dramatically to where they're actually ahead of best estimates. Even now, at the amount of oil being recovered, they're looking at 150 to 200 years of oil.
Are you saying that they're getting a larger percentage of the oil out of the sand using this method than they would mining it up and processing? Okay.
At a far better cost. Now, if some of you remember when Alaska was going to build a great big gas line down to the Midwest, part of the reason for that great big gas line was because some of the majors who are involved in the Trans-American pipeline system also were owners in the tar sands, and they said, you know, we are really short on natural gas for operating all these boilers and heaters and retorts and all that. We could use the gas down in the Athabasca tar sands. We'll just run the gas line down to the Midwest to Chicago. It's going to have to go right through Edmonton, Canada, and Alberta, and we can take a side pipe right on over into Fort McMurray. 48-inch side pipe.
Small project.
Yeah, little tie line. Actually, that was the whole thought, was that most of the gas was going to go down here to make oil so that America would have oil. Well, then obviously more gas was discovered in other places, and now they're bringing gas in from other places. But originally, that was one of the concepts, was that gas had a market, and it was to run boiler systems. So this is a SAGD. That is The name slips my mind. I was talking and I forgot. Hang on.
Steam assisted gravity drain?
Yeah, it's a, steam assist. I wanted to say something else, but no, that's not right. Steam assisted gravity drainage. So I won't expect you guys to be able to fill in the blanks on that. If I can't remember, then I will certainly have a selection of choices. You know, like sub-assisted gravity drainage, steam-assisted, who knows what else, but something. Steam-assisted gravity drainage.
They're using some of that same technology to get gas out of coal too, aren't they?
Yeah, same thing. So let's move on, take a look at some of the processing, because it's going to look very familiar to those that have been in systems and have seen some things having to do with mining processing, where we talked about mining processing. And this is what you're going to do in the in situ part. A lot of it's just going to be oil, but it's going to be a real gritty oil coming up. It's going to be a lot of sand mixed in with it. So you're still running it through this, but you're bypassing some of the steps. If you're digging, you're going to have to crush it, move it, extract it through big extractors, then bring it into the dilution, pull the bitumen out, and begin to make the bitumen, which you run through a refining process to go ahead and clean up the crude oil. Much as you would in a refinery, if you were processing all of the bottoms off of the crude. If you're pulling up in situ where you've got lots of grit in the material, then you're bypassing the crushing and moving, but you're coming right into an extraction process. Either way, you're having to clean the oil up, and it's going to have grit and sand and material in it. So take a look here at what we've got. Oil sands, let's see. It's, like I said, it's going to look very similar to a mining operation process. You're going to come in, you're going to crush, it's going to be going through crushers and everything to get the gravel all down. You don't go through ball mills and different things like that, but you do come into a primary separation vessel, and then you're going to float off, go through flotation, through your thickeners, begin to clean it up. You're going to have sand tailings, gravel tailings, fine tailings, and then you're going to be pulling off your bitumen froth. And that bitumen froth is going to be something like a heavy oil tar mixture that you'll then go in and begin to clean up through solvent recovery, and I'll show you some photos of that without taking it too deep. Just to be aware that these are some actual photos of one of the processing facilities, Sunoco's processing facility in Fort McMurray. This would be their thickener, an extraction separation process where they're actually skimming and pulling the oil up off of your material as it's coming out. Then this shows you where it's actually feeding down. This is where it's actually been separated. It's going to be boiled and cleaned up. And then it'll go up into your separator, and that would be this great big huge device right here. And it would be extracted out. This is a pretty good size vessel. Now I'm not going to try to belabor any of this too much. A lot of the equipment is going to look somewhat similar to what you see in the oil industry. That's because this is actually oil industry. And then it goes into your extraction process. And you can have both pressure columns and vacuum columns. And what you're going to end up with is syncrude. This is where I was going. I'm not going to belabor the other portion. That's all downstream oil. But what you're going to do is end up with a syncrude type product. This is actually going to be refined somewhat, but this would be the heavy, thick bitumen product that now we're going to make a crude oil out of. I'll show you the finished product, and I'm going to show you the finished product because it's the product that is being shipped through the Keystone Pipeline at this time, and then I'll show you the Keystone Pipeline, the additional section that is being roadblocked at this time. But this would be what you would boil off, whether you're digging up gravel and going through a mining process to arrive at this point, or whether you're pulling the oil up through steam-assisted gravity drainage and then running it through your separator and then ending up with crude of this nature. Either way, it's a very thick, heavy, tarry type crude. So then what you do is you take that bitumen or that tar and you begin to run it through your process. You'll run it through an atmospheric column and you'll pull off your naphthas, your kerosene, your gas oils, just like you would in a refinery if you were processing a very heavy crude oil. This would be far heavier than, say, North Slope crude, but that's what you do. You go ahead and you boil off your light ends and take that on out. Then you come in and you run it through a vacuum column and you begin separating out your different distillates. You take your residue off and you go ahead and pull the asphaltenes out, and then you go ahead and go to bitumen storage. And so that's a whole other thing beyond this class. So what do I end up with? What I'm going to end up with is, and I'll show you, this would be a large-scale commercial tar sands plant in Fort McMurray. This is owned by Sunoco, and this is also another view of that same tar sands commercial producer. And then this would be what you'd end up with for your basic crude that's being shipped over to Keystone.
It's nice looking.
Nice light oil. But the problem that is, and I've gone ahead and watched some of the C-SPAN testimonies on this, is it's not so much the crude, because the crude is crude oil. It's not any dirtier or any cleaner than any other crude oil. It's the fact of where it comes from and how it's produced. That's what makes people mad. And that's the 90% of the testimony is, well, it's not the crude, it's how it's brought into being we don't like. And so that's part of the reason for not wanting the Keystone pipeline, is because you don't like where the crude's coming from. And so this is when you hear about Keystone and you see this in the news, this is what you're really looking at, is right here. This would come from Alberta up at the top in Hardisty, and then come down to the actual, this is actually in place right here, and this is in place, and this is also in place, and it has been built. But this part right here is the part that's being held up. No permits will be issued for this. So consequently, and the reason that everybody in the oil industry wanted this particular line, even though there's one here, is it gives access for the Bakken area right here to go ahead and build feeder lines into the Keystone pipeline. Now there's some good reason for that, over and above shipping oil. The big reason for that is safety-wise, environmental-wise. How's all the oil in the Bakken being shipped right now? Anybody aware? By railroad. Is railroad safer than pipelines?
No.
No.
And it's not anywhere close to environmentally friendly as pipelines are either.
No, because you are exhausting a lot of fumes and everything else. But a lot of railroads are being built all over, being thrown up everywhere around this area, and so the oil is going by rail, and it's going to different terminals and then being fed into these pipelines. If this pipeline was built here, then what would happen is you just could build feeder lines, and that would eliminate all the rail traffic. So that's part of the reason that of what's going on.
So all the morons that are opposing this,
I didn't say that.
they're just focused on the where it's coming from, but by opposing the pipeline so much, they're not even realizing that they're worsening this rail problem, right?
No, they know that. It's admitted on the C-SPAN testimonies.
Well, they're just making it worse then. I mean,
One of the far left television personalities interviewing some lady from the EPA or something like that, and even he was in favor of the pipeline. And he's far left, and he was giving her all the facts, how much safer it is, how many less people die, how many less accidents there are, how many less spills there are. and she would still argue with him.
For some, yeah, I don't know, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency is somebody, the State Department has come out and said they see it as probably okay, and I'm not real certain anymore exactly who's saying no, but I know no permit is being issued. I watched all those early testimonies, but I've kind of lost track of exactly who's stopping it now.
I'll tell you who, so you don't have to admit it. Dumb people.
But the original opposition had nothing to do with spills in the U.S. The original opposition, now they're saying it's because of possible spills in Nebraska. But the original opposition was because of the way the oil was being brought out of the ground up here. That was the original opposition. And they said it was dirty oil. Well, it's not dirty, it's crude oil. But it is being harvested in a manner that was different than normal oil. So I can't really follow the opposition now and where it's being opposed and why. All right, let's move on. So I need to show you some more stuff. We're not done now. Okay, so that's that. So this is the other side of the street. This is Syncrude, Mildred Lake, Alberta. This is actually a picture from years ago, strip mine, ripped and torn. I mean, we've got a disaster on our hands. Y'all agree? Okay, you guys know I'm going somewhere with this. I'm not, this is Sunoco Oil's thing, okay? So I'm going to show this to you. This is what they did. They began to clean it up. They planted trees. And this is over about a 15 to 20 year period. This is what they've done. They've actually developed it, and you can't even tell that it was ever strip mined. There's actually some employees walking in there. This is what it looks like now. Same area, and this is what they've actually got there now, is buffalo with little calves, okay? Yes, all right. That's good for advertising. But they actually, this particular area, this is what it looked like before, or after, and what it looked like before was like this. So they are following through on their promise of cleaning it up. Canada's being pretty stringent about following the rules of doing green recovery. But it's fascinating to me that Canada, who is a very environmentally friendly country, is one of the biggest pushers on tar sands. And they are really pushing that production.
It's obviously only a temporary issue since they're really enforcing the recovery.
Yeah, they're actually cleaning up afterwards, and they're really encouraging going after the steam-assisted gravity drainage type of production where you're. But then that's being opposed environmentally because who can think why?
Water.
Because you're firing off a lot of boilers which are making greenhouse gases and changing the environment.
So they put CO2 scrubbers in this tanks or what?
I'm just telling you what I know.
Because I mean,
I can't.
It's pretty easy with the technology these days to capture that CO2.
No, I don't know.
And put it back in the ground.
Especially folks want to shut that down too. They don't like that idea. So that's where we are. That is the world in a nutshell. I can't think of anything else to tell you. I think oil and gas is just about done. Let me see if I missed anything. Let's see, that says oil and gas final right there.
Show us.
Yeah, I could show you that one, huh?
We'll get it done in advance.
Just a second. Okay, Henry, no more ready.
Yeah. Oh, you guys are so funny. Oh. Let's see. So what am I going to have on the final? I've got an old final here. I'll tell you some of the stuff I had on it in the past. Okay? I don't mind giving you a hint of what you're looking for. Oh, let's see. Some of the things that I have had in the past. You guys remember drawing lots of diagrams and identifying lots of stuff on diagrams?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna probably have lots of diagrams. Okay, so you've got new diagrams. You've got coalescers, three-phase separators. You're gonna have oil wells. You're gonna have different types of oil wells, such as ESPs, things of that nature. On the oil wells, you're going to have to be able to identify some of the same parts that you identified before. The mud flow is always an option. I like the mud flow, that's a good one. You're going to have to be able to draw a formation. I'm going to have you draw a formation and identify all kinds of parts and pieces on it again, like we've done before. Going back to the first week, we did, first couple of weeks, we did a lot of history. I want you to know the same history as before. I need you to know about California oil tunnels, Poland oil wells looking for rock oil, and then oil discovery in America. What year was it?
59.
1859. And who was it?
Okay,
Okay, and how far down was it?
69.5 feet.
That's right. And where did it take place at?
Thomasville, Pennsylvania.
God, you guys are good. All right. But then the one that really changed everything took place where?
Beaumont.
That's right. And who was it that did the drilling on
The
that?
Hamill brothers.
What was the big deal about that particular well? A couple things. Rotary, drilling mud, and what else did it do that had never been done before? Blowout and a lot of production. Changed everything.
Have you ever read how they figured out about the mud? You know, it's all red clay down there.
Yeah.
They had rain and the cows ran through.
That's the old legend.
Created, yeah.
And then they used the mud and then it coated the well and kept it from collapsing in.
And since it's the same makeup as the soil in the well, we're environmentally conscious too, since we're dumping calendar.
And you know how old the Hamill brothers were? You don't have to know this, but who in here is about 25 to 28 years old? Okay? That's the Hamill brothers. That's all the older they were. They weren't even in their 30s.
Well, your life expectancy then was probably 40-something, so they were old.
Probably not.
No, there were old people back then, Harley. I know Stephen Austin had to be 65 or more, and probably some of the others. Okay, so keep all that in mind. Keep in mind about Alaska. I'm going to ask some questions about Alaska, probably Katala. I may ask about a Niskin Bay across the way, and some of the oil that was found there. Realize that oil was being discovered in Alaska at the same time as the gold rush. Where was the first refinery in Alaska?
Near Cordova.
Near Cordova. What finally closed it down? I probably won't answer this, but it was a fire, and that's what finally closed it down just before World War II. Well, what was the thing that caused Alaska to become a state?
Swanson River.
Swanson River. What was the reason that we became a state because of Swanson River?
Because now we can pay for ourselves.
That's right. Before that, Alaska was considered a poor, destitute stepchild. That's about what it was, poor, destitute stepchild. And so let's go ahead and move on into, that gives you some idea of some of the things I'm going to ask for. I'll probably ask for the first major, or the first commercial refinery in the world. Where was that? What country was that? Romania. I had a lot of wrong answers on that in the homework. And so I'm going to probably ask 3 countries, like I did on the homework, that were where oil was discovered before 1860. Name me 3.
Poland here and then Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan, okay. And so if we were looking at,
It's not that hard.
let's see, so that pretty much encompasses a lot of what we need to do as far as oil. Probably when we get into offshore, I'll talk offshore in just a minute. So then we went into geological stuff. Let me keep on task here. Hang on a second. Let's see. Week 2 and 3. Yeah, we went to geological on week 2 and 3. And so geological So what are some of the things I want to know in geological? How about 3 types of rocks?
Sedimentary.
Okay, name me 2 types of sedimentary.
Plastic, non-plastic.
Okay, what's the difference between plastic and non-plastic?
Plastic was created by erosion or whatever, and
Non-plastic.
non-plastic by sediment by.
By precipitants, okay. And so, where do I find the oil?
Sedimentary.
Sedimentary type rocks, okay. And what are 2 qualities that I need in that sedimentary rock?
Permeability and porosity.
Okay, very good. What's that? I thought you were saying that. But it sounded good. You can write that on your paper. I'm sure I'll understand. Let's see. Okay, name me a couple of different types of formations. Say 3 or 4 different types of formations.
Anticline, stratigraphic.
Pancakes.
Fault dome, okay, those are all good ones. It's definitely not a syncline. What's the difference between a syncline and an anticline?
A syncline is more like a dip, and anticline.
That's right. I had people answer syncline before. Please don't do that. It's not syncline, anticline. Okay, let's see. What else do I want to tell you about?
Difference, what's the, I remember what's the 2 different types of ownership?
Yeah, I'm going to get into that. I think I should probably do that one right now. Yeah, let's do that. That'd be on leases. So 2 different types of ownership. So we have ownership in place, we have non-ownership in place. I'm going to ask questions about this. Ownership in place, I'm in a state that has ownership in place. Do I own the oil that is under the ground? Ownership in place. I own the oil that's under the ground, absolutely.
So that's Texas.
Yep, that's
And
Texas.
Louisiana is non-ownership.
Louisiana and Pennsylvania are non-ownership in place. What do I have to do if I'm in Louisiana or Pennsylvania?
You have to produce it.
I have to produce it in order to own it. What do I have to do with my neighbor? Say Lacey's my neighbor.
You can give her a.
You gotta give notice.
No, that's ownership in place, you have to give a notice, and non-ownership in place is.
Well, I actually have to notify them, but if they don't produce, that's their problem.
Yeah.
First come, first served.
Yeah, it's whoever produces it owns it, but I tell her, I call her up one day and say, hey Lacey, I'm getting ready to start my well. And she goes, well, go for it, Henry, and boom, and there goes the oil. So,
That's how it is.
I said that so you'd understand. But let me go ahead and back up a little bit. What is the thing that gets formed up quite frequently because of a lot of mixed ownership in places like that? Units. The units then tend to, and the government strongly encourages units to do what? Alleviate legal problems. Okay, so now out in the inlet we have like the kitchen lights unit, we have the K Beach gas field unit, we have the Swanson River unit, the Soldotna Creek unit up on the north slope, we have the Moose's Tooth unit, we have all kinds of different units. That's because you have multiple ownership within those units, and then we'll have one operator who will produce, and then we get a percentage off of that. That way, so Lacey comes back and she calls me back and says, Henry, I've been thinking if I can't duplicate the accent. She says, I've been thinking about this, and you know, perhaps what we ought to do is you and I and Jeremy and Jared and Sean, we ought to form up a unit, and we can all get some percentage, and we'll just go ahead and get Sean to go ahead and operate it for us, and we'll all be in good shape. So I tell her, go for it, you organize it. She does, and then Sean's happy, he's making money. I'm happy, I'm making money, and I'm not having to put any infrastructure on my place. Okay, does that all make sense? That's a unit. But the ownership in place, I own it. But again, like you said, if you're getting ready to produce, You tell them, hey, I'm getting ready to produce. Now, this may affect your ownership over here, but through no fault of my own, I'm going to produce my oil that's under my ground. So I would suggest that you begin to produce yours, because otherwise, use it or lose it.
Because it's going to flow from high.
That's right.
Pressure to low pressure.
Yeah, and so then that would be a case where somebody would come back and then they'd say, hey, I think we need to go ahead and form up a unit.
Is that a pooling agreement? Or is that?
Yeah, it's like a pooling agreement. So it gets very complex. The units have helped alleviate a lot of that problem. That's why we looked at units up north, and what did we see? Lots of varieties of ownership. How many did we see that were actually solely owned? I don't know that we actually saw. Was there maybe one or two?
There was some.
BP had a couple that were solely owned. Yeah, but not very many, was there?
There was like Liberty.
Yeah, Liberty, I think, is solely owned, and they just sold that off to Hillcorp. So, but those are rare anymore. You almost always have multiple ownership. Okay, let's move on. So then we came down to, let's see, what do we have for regions? We had seismic work. I want you to know the different waves for seismic. We've talked about that. Some of the things that why we need seismic work, the fact that you can do seismic work on land or in the water. And then we talked about units, different designations, different places around the state. Outer Continental Shelf, obviously offshore mpra to the west of Prudhoe Bay, Anwar to the east of Prudhoe Bay. The North Slope, you've got Prudhoe Bay. You should know some of the different units of Prudhoe Bay. Cook Inlet down in this area. Those are the main oil producing areas. Okay, let's see. Let's go on to in 4 and 5. We did lots of things on rigs. You're going to need to identify rigs again. I want to make certain that you really learn that. So you're going to have some kind of a rig, and you're going to have some kind of identification, just as we've done before. Though this time, to facilitate timeliness of the test and stuff, I'll probably have the names, and you just have to identify everything. You won't actually have to try to think, okay, what is this that I need to draw in here? So be a little bit
So you're gonna
more.
have the rig already drawn then? And-
I'll have a rig already drawn.
Oh,
Yeah. And I think that's what I've done in the past, and I intend to do that this time. Let's see. Yeah, I probably will do that again, just like that. Okay, but you should be able to draw formations with rigs and tell me what is a dry hole and know the definition for a dry hole. It's just not producible. And then also know the difference between a top drive and a rotary table. And then hang on, I gotta think. Some of the things I forgot to mention on the geological. You should know gas cap, seat seal, some of those things also. Okay, let's see. Off of the homework 9, having to do with economics, know some of the terminology like reserves in place. I won't ask you for the formula on figuring out reserves, but you should know some of the economic terminology. And then, for example, when I say economic terminology, some of the things would be an acronym like DDA, which had to do with depreciation and things of that nature. So when we talked about emulsion, jumping ahead to emulsion, oh wait, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back just a minute. Let's go to 6 and 7. This had to do with rigs. Okay, I don't want to get into emotion yet. Rigs, know how to identify the rigs. I'm going to give you specific ones you should be able to identify. If I show you pictures, you should be able to identify a jackup rig, a drill ship, semi-submersible, compliant tower, tension leg, and a spar. And if I ask you what an FSPO is or an FSO, you should be able to tell me. You should be able to, and I may even ask you about a gravity-based platform like the Hibernia and the Troll. They were gravity-based. Those are strictly by weight sitting on the bottom. On these, the only ones that just drill only are the jackup rigs and drill ships. They're the only ones that drill.
Everything else is mobile.
Everything else will be a combination, or can be. Even down to your barges. Your barges can be both drilling and production. The only thing that is a little odd is the FSPO, which is a production facility or a storage facility. But all the rest of them can do either or. Now, one of the things I might ask this time around is which ones are mobile? Okay, let's look at it. Hibernia, gravity base, that's fixed. Okay?
It was mobile one time.
Yeah, mobile one, who said that? It was mobile once, that's true. Jackup rigs are mobile. Drill ships are mobile. Semi-submersibles are mobile. We carry them on big old carriers, okay? Compliant towers? No. Tension leg? Well, technically, if you answer either way, I will take it. But a tension leg technically is mobile. It can be moved. It's not mobile in the same sense, but I would count that as a mobile platform along with a spar. Okay? Because you could go out with a crane, pull the top off of a spar, tip it over, move it, put it on a new location, and actually start all over again. Technically, these are mobile. Okay, so
The easiest thing to remember would be what's non-mobile, which is essentially a gravity-based and compliant tower.
yeah, gravity base, compliant tower, anything that's built like a structure to the bottom.
Well, those are everywhere.
Those are generally non-mobile. Now, I've never read of I have to tell you, I've not read of any spars or tension legs actually being moved. Those are theoretically able to be moved, but I've not read of that being done. But we'll count them as mobile because they're built for that. Okay, I'm not going to ask you much about any of the equipment under the sea because we covered that too quickly and it's very detailed, it's very odd. So I'm not going to ask you any of the acronyms on the undersea stuff like PLTs, pipeline end terminals and things of that nature. So I won't be asking that. Okay, on your wells, I'm going to ask quite a few questions on completions because that's kind of the latter part of the semester. I'll be asking for you to be able to identify well parts, Christmas tree parts, probably wellhead parts like you've already done, and some of that. You should be able to identify a lot of stuff. Then, and some of the definitions that we went over. Yeah, that would be pretty much what we'll do there. I'll talk about fracturing, horizontal drilling, surface safety valves, subsurface safety valves, different things of that nature. I want you to know all the parts and pieces. Okay, on pipeline operations, should know your phase separations, why we have tankage periodically on pipelines. Why would I have tankage periodically on a pipeline? Most of you got this right.
So that if you have a problem, it doesn't stop production.
Doesn't stop production, and I also have something that makes it secure that I have good
So you keep pumping it, because it's gonna lose pressure eventually.
That's right, it will lose pressure because of resistance in the pipeline, and where I've got additional pumps and facilities, like the original Trans-Alaska Pipeline had 8 pump stations, they had periodic tankage to assure that they always had suction pressure for the pumps. Then you feed into the tankage and pull off the tankage. So in essence, it wasn't one long pipeline, it was it was 8 short little pipelines, or 9 short little pipelines.
Sort of short.
See, what else do I want to tell you here? So we would have, we talked about pigging. You should understand pigging. What else should I tell you about? Should I ask you about? Let me see what I've got in here. Okay, how about on emulsion, let's see, production, hang on, let's see what we did for production. Okay, on production, know the different kinds of pumps that we've got. Pump jacks, we've got electrical submersible pumps, we've got water flood for a secondary enhancement, we've got gas injection, we've got gas lift. Water flood and gas injection both try to build up pressure in your formation, whereas gas lift is reducing pressure in your wells, in your production stream. Okay. Then we talked about a third type, and this is in addition to pumps, like ESPs, electrical submersible pumps, and then hydraulically actuated pumps and things of that nature. But then we also talked about a tertiary type, which is a miscible injection, where we're injecting CO2 gas or something of that nature along with water. And so that was to help clean off some of the rock formations and things of that nature, to try to cleanse the formation. Let's see, gas lift, okay. Okay, I mentioned the fact that a lot of well pads are very different. Does anybody remember why they're different? It's all location driven. I don't know that I'll ask any questions on that, but I could. Well service. On well service, know that you've got wireline outfits, you've got slick lines and wireline. What's the difference between slick line and wireline?
Slick line is just a thin, small tool.
Yep, just mechanical is all it is. Whereas a wire line has what? Signal going down. And I can actually set explosives, I can go down and I can log the well with electronics. A slick line is a mechanical tool. Let's see, and I will be feeding that in my Christmas tree through what?
Swab valve.
Through my swab valve, very good. They were doing that out at the gas field yesterday when we were out there. They were working. Let's see, pipeline operations, we've got that, production operations. Let's go down here to emulsion. In emulsion, in normal crude oil emulsion, which is the dispersed phase? Water. It gets shattered and is dispersed through my oil. Okay, so know what you've got as far as your dispersed phase and your continuous phase. Continuous would be the oil, your dispersed phase would be the water. You're going to have emulsion, you're going to have an emulsifier. You should know some of those terms. You should know emulsion, emulsifier, miscible liquids, continuous phase, dispersed phase. Those would be some terminology to know. Then you should know how to either draw or identify the parts on a coalescer. Okay, and be able to kind of give me some idea how that works. Let's see where we're at. We are clear up here to week 13 and 14, and I'm not going to ask you any questions on what we lectured today. That was a freebie. That was more for informational stuff, so that you go out of here all knowed up and smart and intelligent. Okay? You know what? I could ask you a question. I could ask, who's the biggest importer of oil into America? Where's the oil come from?
Yeah, where's the part?
Elmer, Tarzan. Okay, what is the biggest producer in America now for oil? In America? No? The Bakken, aha, very good, that was a good answer. Okay, who's the second biggest producer? Prudhoe Bay, okay. And who's probably the third biggest? East Texas, okay. Oh, okay, yeah, yeah. Okay, I will see you guys, if not next Thursday, I'll see you sooner than that in some other class. Y'all have a very good weekend.